In the face of really the existential issue of our generation, we are trying to do this in a way where we bring joy and fun to the issue.
You know, what's a person to do about climate change?
People talk about, oh, we just need to change our lifestyle drastically, or we need to stop this, stop driving.
Should I insulate my home or not insulate? Should I buy a hybrid car or not buy a hybrid car?
I'm like, you know what, get real. CCL, I think the carbon tax really makes sense to me. I think that would be a very good way of approaching it.
Climate change is happening because we are putting things that trap heat into the atmosphere. And when you're on a sinking ship, the first thing to do is to plug the hole. So what we need to do is we need to plug the hole. We need to stop putting climate forcers into the atmosphere. The fastest way to do that is to get renewables on the ground now. The fastest way to get renewables on the ground now is to make them cost competitive or even cheaper than fossil fuels. That's how we're going to address climate change.
CCL's message basically is get educated and then get political. And that's what we do. They train people in the gaps in their knowledge and help them fill in those gaps because they know we need to make the changes, but most of us have gaps in what we know. So by getting together for a couple of days and comparing notes and bringing in world-class speakers, we really do learn something. I've learned something every time I've come to a conference. But the real important part is to put it into practical use and head for that hill up there and sit down and talk with a half dozen to a dozen congressional people over a day or two or three and make a difference. It's an incredibly effective organization.
There's nothing in this whole business that has made me more optimistic than the growth of this organization and the fact that the leaders understand what's needed.
I believe there were probably about 25 or 30 in the first one that I attended, and we have doubled in size every year. Walking into the hotel conference room this year and seeing 350 chairs was so exciting.
Well, the amount of activity that's happening is really remarkable. You know, when we used to get any letter to the editor published, we used to go out of our mind. You know, look at this thing that happened. And now, every month, there's over 100 letters to the editor. And then there's op-eds and meetings with members of Congress. So the main thing that's changed is just the volume of activity that's happening.
I'm Camila Thorndike, and I'm with the Southern Oregon chapter of CCL. What I like about CCL is their rigor with process of a monthly meeting. You can tell that Mark and Amy and Susan and all the crew prepare really diligently for every call, that it starts on time, it ends in time. There's a discipline to it, which I think we absolutely need because people are so often on the verge of despair anyways, that if you don't have a sense of assuredness that you can plug in next month and the month after that, and that your efforts are going to go noticed, without that, it's easy to jump in with a lot of energy, kind of burn out, and then trail away forever. But to know that something's really well organized and is not going to disappear tomorrow brings a lot of, I think, faith and optimism into what we're trying to do.
I am standing in front of the Canadian Embassy because I know that our government opposes a carbon tax vehemently because they know once a carbon tax is in place, it's game over for the tar sands, right? But that's a good thing because Canada needs to diversify its economy. Then the exciting thing is you guys inspired us so much that we're actually doing our first Canadian conference in Ottawa in the fall. So we're really looking forward to that, yeah.
As I've gone around the United States and Canada stumping for my book, stumping for a carbon tax, the one question that keeps coming back is, all right, so you've convinced me on the merits, but I don't see this happening politically. And I never had a good answer to that. I've never thought it was my strong suit to say, well, I'm not a political strategist or a social psychologist or a kind of a communications professional. But that's kind of a lame answer. It's not really right to go and write a book and say, this is the answer. And when someone says, how do we get it done, to shrug and say, I don't really know. So
We feel kind of helpless sometimes because there's all this money and all this influence, but it's our vote.
You don't go into Congress because you're cynical. You go into Congress because you're hopeful that you can achieve change. And when that doesn't happen, you start to put up barriers and you create this expectation, oh, something's never going to happen, oh, why try? And it's a defense mechanism so you don't go crazy. But with all the great support of the volunteers in CCL, you know, I don't go crazy. I have all these people who are doing all these amazing, wonderful, hopeful things.
To be complacent about it functioning or not ensures that it doesn't. So the only way, even if it doesn't work, which we can't stake our work on anyways, you know, I think that it's morally right, it's emotionally satisfying, it gives meaning really to these crazy times in our lives which feel very small within it.
For me it's my love of the natural world, and you know, the world isn't great but I quite like it the way it is, and we're careering down headlong into some real trouble, and I want to be able to look my daughter in the eye and say I did what I could.
I have 3 kids, 3 stepkids, and 8 grandchildren. She told the boys that I was coming to Washington again to be a climate hero, and they thought that was pretty cool and wondered if I got to wear a cape. My whole heart reason for being here is for my children and my grandchildren. I don't want to leave them a big, huge mess.
The Bucktown Community Organization is going to have a meeting, and Congress Representative Quigley, who is a representative for the 5th Congressional District of Chicago, is going to be there. I was like, oh, maybe I should go and try to talk to him, or like ask a question about, you know, what he thinks about climate change. And then I asked him a question, and he took interest, and I said I am part of a Citizens Climate Lobby, and I briefly explained what it was about, and he took interest, and he told his aide right there, oh, get her name, let's get a meeting with this group. And I was like, I can't believe he just did that. So yeah, so I just followed up on that, and then it ended up becoming a meeting that's going to happen on Tuesday.
My name is Pamela Chanel, and I'm from Sudbury, Ontario.
Have you lobbied before?
No, this is my first time lobbying too.
I know there's a lot of people here today that they're going into their members' offices thinking, oh my gosh, this is the first time, what do I say, what do I do? But they're with a team, and I'm really proud of them for taking that step. There's people who are here experienced, who've done it before, that are going to be there to support them. I think that's the key.
I no longer see members of Congress as these weird big people who I have no contact with. They're just people. And you go in there, you talk to them, they have limits, they can't do everything, and they need people to tell them what's going on with the climate.
We are building an army, a peaceful army. And our weapons are truth and nonviolence, and as we keep saying over again, respect and admiration for those who would oppose us. You and I are engaged in a battle for all of life. All of life. Not just humankind, but for all of life. I don't see anybody else coming. You know, when you get in a dire situation, the cavalry shows up, right? Well, I'm sure of it, you are the cavalry. We are the cavalry. And we're going to win. And there's no choice about it. There's no choice. We're going to win.